Hey, Hardscape pros, get ready to turn adversity into opportunity in 2024 with the Hardscaper Showcase events. Discover cutting-edge tools, new construction techniques, and must-have products that will set you apart from the competition. This year, we're diving deep into pool projects, unlocking secrets to flawless coping installations, addressing drainage challenges, and maximizing value for your clients. You'll also learn how to elevate your outdoor kitchen game. We're talking about streamlining builds, creating multifunctional spaces, and impressing clients with innovative concepts. Finally, we'll show you how to stay ahead of the curve with the latest design trends. Explore new color combos, patterns, and layout strategies that will leave your clients speechless. Don't miss out on the Hardscaper Showcase events, empowering hardscape professionals to thrive in 2024. Visit events.hardscaper.com and sign up today. You're listening to Hardscape Growth, a podcast for hungry professionals who want to grow their businesses and level up. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Hardscape Growth Show. I'm your host, Alex from TechnoBlock, and today we're joined by Mark Bradley, the CEO of LMN Landscape Management Network, the go-to landscape management software in North America for anyone in the green industry. Super excited to have Mark on today because he is someone who's seen a lot of the transformation of the industry, a lot of the growth of the industry, and been one of the pioneers driving that growth and the evolution of what is a contracting business in 2023 and 2024. So super happy to have him on. Mark, welcome to the show.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. We had a great time. One of our last episodes that came out, you were a part of that panel discussion that we had in Florida with our Techo Pro President's Club event. And there were a lot of great points that you brought up. And I figured we didn't have the chance to dive into a lot of them in great detail during that conversation. But I figured this would be a good opportunity to do that. Are you cool if we talk about some of that stuff?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm excited to dive a little deeper on a few of those topics for sure.
All right. So you've been on a ton of stages across North America. You've been on a ton of different podcasts and different webinars and stuff like that. So I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with LMN and have heard of you and probably even heard from you. But there's probably a few people who are listening today who don't know much about who you are. So maybe we can take like a super, super quick little detour and just talk a little bit about your contracting days and the success that you had building that business and then subsequently selling it, and then the transition to LMN, and then we'll dive into the really good stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I always say that I kind of started my career in the landscape business much like most, pickup truck and a wheelbarrow. Just had a urge to work outside. And I think ultimately early in my career, I really focused a lot on hardscape. So, laying pavers was where I started. So very much my heart and soul. And, as the business evolved, we really sort of transitioned the business into more of a full service landscape company. So we were doing installation and we were doing a little bit of maintenance, a good amount of snow plowing, but the business just kind of continued to evolve around residential design build for most of my career. Toward the later part of my career, we started to do a little bit more environmental construction and some commercial parks and whatnot, but still a lot of hardscape work as we sort of matured. So I spent 20 years running my landscape company, and in my 10th year in business, I had really decided that it was time to build some software to help us maintain the momentum and the growth and make sure that we could really share information with our field crews in a way where they understood what success looked like day to day. We wanted to really just make sure that what we were doing in the day-to-day could be repeated. And ultimately, that's how I ended up in software.
So initially, that software was built for your own company. At what point did you say, like, you know what, maybe I should branch this off and make it its own thing?
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. Like around, I guess, 2 or 3 years prior to starting to build software, I was sitting on the board at Landscape Ontario, and I was doing more and more speaking, and I was teaching other contractors how to budget and how to estimate. And so, as I started building software for my own company to scale those same things, it almost immediately became apparent that it made sense to sell it to others. So um, I would say as we started building the software, we knew that we were going to sell it to the market, and it was too big of an investment really for us to make just for our
And
own.
just keep it for yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was kind of just clear to us almost from the start, really.
Okay. So it all started because you were trying to track certain metrics and share that information with your team leaders so that they could repeat the success that they were having day after day, week after week. And you can really scale the company and manage the growth in a profitable way. When we were on that panel, you said the number one metric, once you've got everything else figured out in your business, is revenue per man hour. Let's talk about why that one specifically and not anything else that I could be looking at.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in like keeping things really simple. And so
Okay.
at the company level, I think there's one key number, and that is revenue per hour. At the crew level, I think there's also one key number, and that's estimated versus actual hours on every job site. And so I've always just felt that if we're selling work that has a really high revenue per hour, then we're going to be able to pay our staff really well, and we're going to be able to achieve a really healthy profit while running a really professional company. And so high revenue per hour is really a result of the total of the labor, material, and equipment, or the total price of the job divided by the number of hours that it takes to perform the work. So we're only talking field hours here. And so if we look at Hardscape, it's generally, 150 to $200 per hour for hardscape installation work. And so I was always a really big fan of design build and of course hardscaping, because we would always see really high revenue per hour, which meant we could have a highly paid staff. We could really invest in really good state of the art equipment. We could spend money on overhead expenses so that we had a good shop and an office and yard and all these things. And so I generally have always felt that that metric was a guiding light because it told us how much money was going to come into the company for every hour that our employees were at working. And that in itself dictates to me how much gross profit and net profit we're going to have very quickly, because those are just ratios of that number. And so I know that I've got 25% of revenue to spend on labor, and I know that I've got 15% of revenue to spend on equipment, and I'll probably spend around 20% on material, and I'll probably spend about 20% on overhead. And that leaves me with a really nice net profit at the end of the day. And what it's telling me is if that number's higher, then I can actually pay my staff a lot more money. And I think it's much easier to run a successful company when you're surrounded by employees who are career minded because they can afford to be. And I've always felt that hardscaping is just a tremendous sector in the green industry to build that high revenue per hour work.
Is my math right? The missing percentage on your calculation was 20% for profit.
That's the number. Yeah. I think that the industry should be working in the 15 to 20% range. I like to bid with 20% profit because 5% disappears at the end of the day. It's just somewhere. I don't know. There's the profit gods that take their part. But at the end of the day, I think if you're left with a nice 15% profit at the end of the year for the company after the owner's been paid, I think you've got a great business that's scalable.
What do you think is the biggest thing stopping people from getting to that number?
A combination of things, to be honest. I think financial literacy just remains to be a big issue in the industry. I think there's a lot of people who are fantastic at doing the work, but they don't take the time to put together a thoughtful strategy for the year in terms of like what the financial plan looks like, which it's a shame that that's such a problem, because it's really only a 4 to 6 hour exercise to create a really strong budget, when you use a framework. And then I think once you've got that budget in place, really understanding how to apply markups to your costs when bidding to make sure that you're actually recovering your overhead and achieving a profit. I think those are foundational things that
Mm.
are missing for some people. And then there's those that have the pricing figured out, but they don't really quite get to the phase where they're job costing. And when they're not job costing, they're not getting that feedback to tell them if their pricing's really solid. And so I always try to say, like, once you've got budgeting and markups and pricing right, make sure that you're job costing to fact check your system. And then I think when that's all in place, it's just a matter of like focus. I just see so many companies, and I certainly fell into this trap myself throughout my career, and I still struggle with this, is like the shiny object syndrome, just getting excited about this other opportunity that's adjacent to what we're doing right now. I think staying laser focused on what you're doing and doing it really well, and actually seeing the returns at the size that you're at today and getting that 15% profit for the size you're at today, that's what really matters, because it's so much easier to duplicate that many times over. But with that shiny object syndrome kind of getting in the way, before we ever really optimize what we're doing, we're already on to the next thing. And I think I see that a lot with landscapers, because the phone rings and there's just too many different types of opportunities. And I think often they all look so good that we go running in different directions.
What comes to mind when you're thinking of these shiny objects? What's a good example of a trap that you keep seeing people
A
fall
big
into?
one that I see is just diversification. I see small companies looking to offer way too many different types of services. And a perfect example really is just, if you're in the landscape business, are you servicing residential or commercial or both? And because they're very different.
Mm-hmm.
The sales process for residential is very different than commercial, and so I think it's easier to create one sales process and service one sector of the market. So, like, narrowing it down to residential or commercial, and then honing your sales process and your skills to that. And so another would be, I see people say, I'm in the landscape install business and I'm going to get into landscape maintenance because there's a lot of demand, or I need recurring revenue, so I'm going to get into landscape maintenance. And I
Mm.
completely understand. And recurring revenue is really great if you're outselling the business, and it can be a sort of a recession proofer or whatnot. And I hear this like really flaming up lately because the economy is in question.
Yeah.
But ultimately, what I think is, if you keep doing what you're doing really well and you find all of the efficiency in what you're doing, and that is running so smooth that you've actually got the time to go and maybe move into a different area, then it might make sense. But the best companies, the most profitable companies that I see, they've got a very specific area of the industry that they're focused on. They're training their staff to be optimized to do that type of work. They're refining their sales process so they're really good at selling that type of work, and they've got really clear marketing messaging so that they're attracting the right leads for that type of work. And in the hardscape business specifically, I just believe that if you're going to kind of diversify, maybe it's best just to diversify in something that's really immediate, like doing more planting or bigger planting or more landscape lighting, or some things that are really complementary to the work that you're doing, as opposed to like spinning up a whole new division and
Mm-hmm.
going out and doing residential landscape maintenance. It's almost a different business, truthfully. And I think I lived this firsthand for way too many years. They really are different businesses. It's completely different staff training, completely different sales and marketing, completely different operations needs. And I think, that would be like one example, but there's many. I think we just start doing too many different types of tasks within the scale of our businesses, often in the landscape industry.
When you're looking at companies that are doing these things, and like you said, it's almost like this rash just kind of flared up in the last few years where people are adding these other services. If they are doing that, or they have already taken the plunge and they've done it, what would be your biggest advice to make sure that it doesn't become a burden or a big boat anchor hanging around their neck as they're trying to grow? Because the market has slowed down right now, but it will rebound fairly quickly in the big picture, not in a small picture, but in the big picture. Give it a couple of years, it'll rebound, and you don't want to have a boat anchor around your neck.
Yeah, no, I mean, a few things I would say is, if you are in the um, landscape business and you've got a fairly diverse company today, look at each division individually and assess if each division is actually profitable. And when you look at, let's say, the 2 or 3 divisions that you might have in your business, as individual businesses, and you actually have a budget for each division, often I see companies get really surprised at how bad some areas of the business are performing, and they don't know because they might not be job costing. And so what I've noticed is, once they know just how bad one area of the business is, they'll either stop doing it or they'll change the pricing to bring that sort of service up to the right level. And what happens if you're in a very profitable business like hardscaping, for example, and then you're also doing landscape maintenance? You have to ask yourself, if you're sharing the crew and they're doing both types of work, which I see smaller companies doing, does it make sense to take your crew that can produce $150 to $200 per hour work and have them going out on Fridays and doing $60 per hour work?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, just find a way to sell more of what you're good at. And in all the time that you're spending to retool and get that crew to stop doing the construction and go out and doing maintenance, all of that is wasted time that's hard to recapture as well. So there's like a lost opportunity number in there that you got to consider. So I've always kind of felt like crews should be dedicated, at the very least, to different types of work. And then when you're really assessing that decision, how much profit are you actually generating off of the different divisions, and then decide if it's worth hanging on to. Usually the companies that grow fastest are really specific about what their customer looks like and what their service offering really is. I just think they avoid getting spread too thin better than others.
I think that comes back to what you were saying with the marketing, the very clear identity. Like, I know who my ideal customer is. I know who I am. I know how I fit with that customer. Yeah. And that's my focus. And I work on doing that better and better and better. That's the fastest way to grow and to optimize profits and to build something that's predictable, scalable, controllable, because you're getting repetition, and you're literally, it's like a sport. You're practicing, you're getting your reps in, and you're getting better and better and better at it. And then you add some new players and they buy into the system, and every line you put on the ice is playing the same system. So we get it. You
just went from sport to hockey, by the way.
Yeah. I do that.
I love that. That's good. But no, at the end of the day, that is the perfect analogy, because, as you can imagine, if you're playing hockey and you're playing baseball, you can't possibly be the best at both. Sooner or later, you're gonna focus on one of those sports. And I think, as kids, when you're doing it for fun, it's healthy, right, to play new sports. But in business, it's like, we're grown up. We've got to get out there and do what we're good at. And it's hard to be really good at a lot of things. And I'm not saying that it's impossible, but I do see a lot of small companies really struggle to scale because there's no focus on being the best at any one thing. And there's no really clear plan in terms of like how they're going to invest in one area of the business or another to get that improvement out of the business and really get where they're going to go. And I think, unfortunately, with no focus, people just kind of get worn out. And I think it ends up being really exhausting as a business owner when you can't really unlock the potential of the company and really see those incremental gains. Because, like, I think we all find happiness in getting better every day. And when you've got a business that's really watered down with too many services, and you're not really truly focused on improving, you don't see that daily improvement that kind of gives you the fuel. Because money, in my experience, is never the fuel. It's really seeing the business get better, feeling it getting better, feeling the flow start to take place, and seeing, your plan really unfolding. And I guess without the plan to begin with, or the focus on the business, you just never really enjoy what you're doing as much as you could, with more focus on the front end of the planning.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I mean, I believe that the money is always the byproduct, and if the money is the result that you're shooting for, well, you're never gonna, either you're not going to be happy, or you're not going to get as much money as you could have if you were really focused on doing things the way that they need to be done, and keep trying to push on doing things the right way. You do things the right way, the rest falls into place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it will always feel like there's not enough money when you're scaling a business anyway. When you're 5 million, you say, well, once we get to 10 million, it's going to be incredible.
Yeah.
The truth is, you get to 10 million and you're just reinvesting that just as fast as you were at 5 million. So ultimately, like, the pleasure of running a business comes from seeing yourself improve, seeing your team improve, seeing your customers enjoying the result of your work, and then seeing the flow of that really start to unfold, and building momentum to the point where, yeah, financially it is a very lucrative business, but it's a result of all of that continuous improvement actually being put into action, which is honestly the fun part.
This episode is brought to you by Hardscaper.com. The Hardscaper mission is to empower industry professionals with the skills, inspiration, and confidence they need to take their businesses to new heights. Struggling with training programs for your team? Looking for helpful tips to build a better company? Subscribe today to gain access to hours of interactive on-demand Hardscape construction and business courses for free. Check out Hardscaper.com. I'll ask you a philosophical question. Do you think that the lack of focus that you're alluding to could be fueled by fear? Because to be the best at something means you have to let go of other things, because you have to go all in on something. Do you think that that's partially what's blocking some of the business people that are in our industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I'll say this. My belief is that humans, get out of bed and move each day for one of two reasons. One is, seeking pleasure, and the other is, avoiding pain or fear. And so, yeah, I believe that when people start a business, they usually start a business, more so seeking pleasure. I think that's the sort of foundational reason why people break out on their own. And everybody's reason there is a little bit different. But generally speaking, they're seeking a better life for themselves and the people they support. And generally that concept, I think, revolves around, having more disposable income and more free time. And I think when we start our businesses, both actually find themselves at an all-time low and stay there for many years. Running a business, they don't call it sweat equity for nothing. There's a lot of extra time put into the business. And so, but what tends to happen is we start our business based on this pleasure seeking mission, and it turns into one of fear. We are afraid from that day forward of going out of business. And so we seek pleasure, but then it immediately turns into fear. And then I think what I see happen, and I've taught thousands of contractors how to budget in our financial literacy workshops that we hold. And I can tell you, almost unanimously, people are very, very fearful of what lies ahead financially when they run a business, and for good reason.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of our day-to-day decision making starts to be fear-based. And so when it is fear-based, you're generally in survival mode. And so when somebody's negotiating with you for a better price, and you're looking at that from, maybe a scarce mindset, and you're thinking of that in a fear way, you're naturally going to maybe negotiate more than you should.
Mm-hmm.
And so the same holds true for like the services that you offer. You start to throw logic out the window when you're afraid, and you're just really kind of grasping onto your survival instincts. And so, hey, we do landscape maintenance and we do install, and both make incredible profit. Well, there's nothing to worry about. So we just keep doing
Right.
both. And I see many companies that fit that bill. Landscape maintenance can be a tremendously profitable business if it's run right, but most people don't run them right. Um, on the hardscape side, I think I see most contractors are more successful financially. And I think there's a simple reason there. It is more complicated work. It's harder to get into. And like, if you know how to do the work, you'll probably make some money at it. At scale, maybe not. You need to learn how
Yeah.
to scale a business. But my experience is like this fear piece that you're asking about, people are afraid to give up something, even if they know it doesn't make money, because they see it as a survival mechanism. There's
Mm-hmm.
cash coming into the
At
business
least I
every
have
week.
it.
Yeah, there's cash coming in every week. And yes, it doesn't actually make any money, but I still need that cash every week. And it's not logical. It's just purely fear taking over and making that decision. And so I do see a lot of companies do a lot of work that they know doesn't make money and won't make money, just purely because they're afraid of giving that up. Um, but I think that the better you get at budgeting and the better that you understand your financials, the more likely you are to overcome that fear and make more logical decisions when negotiating or deciding what type of work is right for the business. When you start to invest in marketing and you really start to realize that spending 2 or 3% of sales is actually, the best investment possible, because you're bringing the right business in that's going to turn into the right revenue per hour that's going to allow you to build the business the way you've planned. And so there very much is just an organized way of planning a business, both strategically and financially, to get all of that confidence to kind of get away from that fear mindset and really run the business with an abundant mindset or a growth mindset that I think allows you to focus and invest on continuous improvement and really like unlock your true potential as a business owner, but also that of all of the people that are working with you in the company, so that they can really grow and the company really grows more simultaneously. And I think once that transparency is there between the owners and the field staff in what success looks like, it just gets much easier for the owner to focus on the right things and really sort of drive the improvements where it's needed, knowing that the staff understand where they need to drive improvement.
You answered every follow-up question as you were going along there.
I went on a rant.
No, it was good. It was good. But I did write one thing down that I can hop on here, which is you mentioned real quick, looking at 2-3% of sales and investing that in marketing. Is that something that is pretty much a standard thing, or do you look at it, or do you see differences across businesses? There are businesses that are very well established and they're trying to maintain versus others that are really trying to grow aggressively. What's the typical range, and where do most people hang out, and is it enough?
Yeah, I think the typical range is like around 1% of revenue, but I don't think that's enough. I think that most companies should probably be 2 to 3%, whether they're in growth mode or not. And I'll tell you, the reason I think that is because your brand can always look better, your website can always look better, and it can be optimized to do two things. Marketing is as a landscaper, you're really trying to attract customers and you're trying to attract employees. In an industry where the number one problem is the workforce shortage, we really need to be marketing to get great people into our businesses. And so I think there is two major components there. And so even if your funnel's full and you've got all the work you need for the year, you still need to be doing marketing because you need to pull better staff in, and there's always better customers out there. And each year you should be trying to get better and better customers, higher revenue per hour, bigger average project size, whatever it happens to be. But I think there's just always a demand to be getting better customers and better employees. And therefore, I think 2 to 3% should be earmarked for marketing so that we've always optimized those channels so that our company's getting better. Because at the end of the day, the success of your company just relies on two things. It's like the quality of the people that you can bring in to perform the work and the quality of the customers or the work that you can bring in for them to perform. And those two things are a result of your marketing strategy and your sales process. And so I'm just a huge believer in getting a really good financial plan and then building a sales and marketing strategy that feeds it. All the while building people and upskilling the team to perform the work as we scale the business. It's a delicate balance, and I think marketing is a key component of it that I think a lot of contractors overlook, and they really focus on doing more of what they've always done instead of looking at the opportunity that marketing might be able to bring from both sides, people and customers.
Yeah, I think when I think back to what you said on the panel about in the final years of TBG, you were the smallest customers you were signing were $500,000. I mean that on its own is justification for your statement of there's always a better customer, there's always a higher end customer, but you need to create the demand. And if you're in that state of abundance, that the world is an abundant place and there's always more to go get, then you can do that. But if you think like, oh, listen, this is about as far as I thought I'd get, so I'm cool with this, well then, yeah, you're happy. The phone rings and it's $100,000 job, and that's what you've been doing every year for the last 3 years. You think like, this is the pinnacle of success for me, but that's not true. And I see so many times business owners. There are business owners that well, not this isn't a conditional thing. This is every time. Every business owner that I have met that seems to not be at a level that they should be, based on the quality of work that they're doing, based on the pricing that they do, the company that they run, the teams that they have. And you're like, just why are they not there? It's almost like, I don't think fear is the word, not to use that one again, but there's like some kind of mental blockage of like, they don't want to pursue further. They're like, this is okay for me. Do you think that's an accurate statement, that it's really just people get complacent, people get comfortable, or is there some other thing that like stops it? Because this market, this industry in North America is insanely small compared to what it can be and what it will be. But constantly running into people that like they don't see that same long-term giant picture that exists.
Yeah, and so I personally don't think it's just fear. I think, as I said earlier, fear takes over when people get overwhelmed. And so my belief is that we get into this business as technicians, me included, pickup truck and a wheelbarrow, out just making it happen. And as the business starts to scale, there's just so many things to think of that you lose focus. And, our frontal cortex takes all the information in, and the back of our brain kind of stores that information. And so as we get more and more experience throughout our career, we're getting a lot more pattern recognition in the back of our subconscious brain, and the front of our brain ideally becomes a little bit less cluttered because we've got the experience. But I think what happens is a lot of startups, a lot of landscape business owners like me, you kind of let the front of your brain get filled with information every day. I've got customers and employees and materials and equipment, and all these problems are stewing, and I've got to deal with all these problems. And so the front of my brain is so busy that I don't actually access, my true knowledge, which is stored away in the back of my brain. And this is just science. And
Yeah.
so what happens is, with all that lack of focus, I just deal with what's in front of me every day. And when I do that, I'm super busy. And so my comfort level to take on more is really low because I'm already at capacity, or I perceive that I'm at capacity. When you kind of step out of that and you start to join peer groups and you start to invest your time in creating a budget, creating an estimating system that's repeatable, and a job management system that is repeatable, what happens is you're taking a lot of that information that used to be in your head and you're putting that into the hands of other people who are more than capable enough to run with these things. And once they start doing that, now the front of your brain is clear,
Opens up.
and now you can see all of that other experience kind of come to the surface. And that's when I see business owners who get that sort of project planning stuff running smoothly. Then they start to think of, okay, like, who is my target customer? Well, it's simple. My target customer is a homeowner with a house that's worth more than $1 million and household income of 250,000 a year. And then you can say, okay, well, how are you going to get those people interested? And then how are you going to sell to those people? And what are you going to sell them? And like then the business becomes more clear holistically, and you start to optimize things that you wouldn't have thought of when you were just worried about ordering material each day. And so I think like what happens is your perspective changes or it doesn't. And, we could call that, you've probably heard of the Peter Principle before. The Peter Principle is a fairly simple one, but, if you kind of put enough on somebody, eventually you'll see their breaking point. I mean, that's kind of it in the simplest term. There's more to it.
Okay.
And as business owners, we put so much on each other or on ourselves. We find our own breaking point, and then we stop evolving as leaders sometimes. Yet in the landscape business, there's this really different opportunity. Each winter, we get a chance to kind of clear our mind. And it becomes very clear. This happened to me many, many years. January and February, I was so clear. I could see where the waste was, and I could see that we did a lot of projects that we shouldn't have. We were working for some of the wrong customers, and we didn't have staff that was trained well enough to perform the work efficiently. And so I'd focus on fixing those things because I could see it clearly. And then we'd run the next year, find some more problems, and get better over time. And like, I think we're really lucky, and I love this industry for that, because we get this break to like fix our businesses. And that's, right now is the time, right? Everybody kind of goes through the holidays, they enjoy time with family, and then January, February, and March, we have this chance to make changes to the business that really impact the following year. And then each year we build upon it. And I think for me, at least, each year in business, I learned a little bit and I applied it, and I would test it, I would measure it, and then I would go back to the drawing board. And once I got really good at doing that on my own, I got much, much better at doing it with other people. And the more that I learned to do that with my team and reflect on how things went and drive improvements, the faster that improvement came about. And so that's kind of like the evolution of a leader in my mind. You're a very different leader when you're running, your startup landscape company than you are when it gets to $1 million, because now you're actually getting other people to do the work for you. And then once it gets to 3 million, you've got a very different leader again, because now you've got to have these scalable systems and ways to measure and whatnot. And so to get past 3 million, you need to evolve again as a leader. And there's a whole different set of needs for a business as it kind of goes from 3 to 10 million. And so, like, as you said, the opportunity's there for everybody, but businesses are only going to evolve if the leader evolves. And I was a very different leader when I was leading my first paver crew than I was when I had 40 crews out doing the work independently. What I knew at one crew, I had to make sure 40 people knew, and they had to be as passionate about delivering success as I was at one crew. And so the leader really evolves. And I think your business will only evolve if you evolve as a leader.
That passionate part at the end of finding people that will not only do the work well, but be as passionate about it. A lot of people will argue that you just won't find them.
You got to make them. That's for sure. And we spend 2 days just kind of opening people's mind up to how to make those people in our mastermind sessions. And we basically spend all the time on the person, the leader, just reflecting on what they're doing. And when all of those things sort of come clear to the leader, they can see for themselves why those other people may not be quite as passionate as they are. And then they know what to do about it. But I do think it's possible. I think there's a lot of really, really passionate people who have an entrepreneurial spirit in the workforce. And I'll tell you why. Everybody gets out of bed every day for one reason, and that's to support themselves and to support their families. And so in that, everybody's an entrepreneur. They literally get out of bed to earn money for themselves, just like a business owner. And so finding a way to align the two, to align the needs of the business and the needs of that person who's trying to support their family, and finding some common ground on the way that they earn money and see success. I think that is the secret to building those people. But it won't happen by accident. And that's really what I mean when I say evolving as a leader. I spent my whole career making mistake after mistake after mistake, and I was far from perfect. In fact, I was just outright hard to work for in my younger years, I think. But the truth is like, through that evolution, what I came to realize is, we're all just the same. And if we really want to motivate people to have the passion, we have to be clear about what the mission is. We have to create some alignment in the way that we get paid. And we have to have a lot of transparency in our business. And most landscape companies don't have those three things quite unlocked yet. There's a lot of room as an industry to get better.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, I'm going to ask you one last question. We're going to go in a completely different direction just because I'm curious, because you are someone who has had the fortunate opportunity to build a company from scratch and bring it up to $50 million of annual revenue and sell the company, start another company. You're leading that company now, and it's both in the industry and both operating on different ends of the spectrum within the industry. Right now, there is a ton of movement within the industry in the form of acquisitions, in the form of a ton of consolidation. The last few years have seen a lot of companies pop up out of nowhere. A lot of companies invest a ton of cash into equipment and people, and now things are slowing down and the cards are shuffling again. What do you make of this situation? What challenges lie on the horizon for leaders in the industry, and what opportunities exist? So I guess it's three questions really, but that's the topic.
Yeah. I'll try to remember. Yeah. So I, like you said, the mergers and acquisitions interest and activity in the landscape industry has been unbelievable, really, the past 3 to 5 years. And it just seems to be growing year over year. So the fuel is kind of simple, really. Ultimately, we've had a great real estate market, which is translated into lots of home improvement spending. But this trend has been on the upswing for many, many years. As you know, early 80s, late 70s, people started to really invest more and more money into their homes, and they've never stopped since. Right through recessions, this industry keeps on going.
Mm-hmm.
And so, are we worried that the economy is going to be impacted with the interest rates and the federal debt? Absolutely. But is this industry going to pull back on a big scale? Absolutely not. It's going to keep going. We're going to see great years ahead. There's no doubt about that. And so the financial markets know this. There's really strong recurring revenue in the maintenance businesses, and there's arguably a very strong recurring revenue in the install side as well. When companies start to build really big referral networks and lots of recurring business from even similar customers or same customers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the interest level is just going to continue. And up until this point, I would say what we've been seeing are a lot of transactions that are strongly related to low interest rates, so low cost of money, which makes it really easy for people to roll up a number of landscape companies, take
Mm-hmm.
advantage of lower overheads, and improve the operational efficiencies, and obviously run a much more profitable company as a whole. I think what we've been seeing is the fuel has been low interest rates. So it may slow down a little bit, I think, just given that the interest rates are a little higher and the expectations are going to be a little higher as a result. But that said, I don't think it's going to really truly slow down to the point where we notice it. I think there's going to be a lot of deals happening in the market, and I think they're going to look for companies that have a really strong financial model in terms of profitability, companies that have really good training systems, people that have a system that they can turn over and others can continue to use. And I think, the companies that focus on doing that every day of their career, building systems, building repeatable process, building people, building training programs, building career development programs, really investing in their brand and the messaging. I think those companies are going to enjoy really great wages for the owners, really great wages for the staff, really good bottom line profits, but a big exit at the end of the day. And there's nothing wrong with planning a great business trajectory with a big exit in mind, because unfortunately many landscapers have found themselves at the end of their career without a great exit, and
it's just the end.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest challenge in handling all this? Like, I mean, obviously building out these systems and continuously working on the business from the standpoint that you just described is in and of itself a challenge, but what's a potential pitfall waiting for us around the corner?
Well, I mean, the big one that I always like to just point out is it's great to build a company with a sale in mind, but don't build your company just for the sale. I just think, I hear a lot of people, they'll come into a workshop and they'll say, I need to retire in 5 years and I'm here to make a plan. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to make a plan for retirement, but 5 years might not be enough, in the sense that I think you start really building a great business. You put all the systems in place so that you unlock the efficiencies every day, and you just keep honing that in. And then in the end, like, there will be a buyer for a great business, and that might be your employees. It might be a competitor. It might be a big private equity firm, somebody that's doing an industry consolidation. But I think it's just this mindset of like, I'm going to build a great company that does hold enterprise value because I did all the right things along the way. And I think that's a healthier way to look at it for people that are sort of mid-stage. Pitfalls, though, what I'll say is, if you are nearing the end of your career and you're looking at an exit involving, an industry consolidator, if your business is predominantly install work, a lot of those like private equity investors are going to really lower the valuation because they don't consider a lot of installation work recurring revenue. And so I think what I'm seeing is some really amazing companies that are really profitable considering um, prices from these private equity firms that I think are too low for the quality of the business. And so there's other ways to retire. It could be an employee stock ownership program where the employees take over a period of time. Could be a competitor in your market who's doing very similar type of work that sees the true value in the business. And so I think some of the risk is just know that based on what your sector is, that there's different ways to exit, that not everybody's going to fit into that sort of industry consolidation private equity model. It's just worth really being mindful of.
How do you even wrap your head around that, though? So let's say you're getting towards the end, and now you've built a great business, and you're seeing that, okay, that option is maybe there, but I'm getting lowballed. The employee stock option or selling to a competitor. Like, how do I even make a plan to do that?
Yeah, and I mean the multiples, to give you an idea, they're ranging between 3 and 12 times EBITDA, which is a massive
It's a big range
swing. And so those are well documented deals, and so it's hard to imagine, but it's like a 4x difference based on what's happening. And so I think if you're going to do a lot of design build work, you're going to see a much lower multiple. But keep in mind, you're also going to have much higher revenues. And so sometimes I think people get a little hung up on the multiple, but they forget about volume. And so if you are doing a lot of design build and you're a $20 million design build company with a, let's say a $6 million EBITDA, and you get a 3x sale, well, that's $18 million. Whereas if you were a $10 million maintenance business, which would probably have more employees than that $20 million construction business and a much more complex business to operate, I think that type of a business is lucky to maybe have, $2 million in EBITDA. And yes, they might get a 6 or 7 time multiple,
but it's
but
12,
ultimately
14.
it's not really more. And so I see a lot of construction guys running to the other end of the ship saying, well, I want to run a maintenance business because you get higher multiples. But I always say, well, that's cool. Higher multiple on what? Like, what if you can get a higher multiple on more volume because construction grows faster? Just know that the multiple isn't everything. The dollar is important. And so that's one piece of advice that I often give people when they're trying to like tune up the business to sell it. Like, I always say, like, just get the highest EBITDA possible, which is, your earnings before taxes and depreciation and interest. Make sure that number is as high as possible, or your gross profit or net profit, if you're more comfortable with those terms. Make sure that that number is optimized and that it's as good as it can possibly be for 3 years, then sell your business. So that's my most simple advice. And that's not easy to do. Back to diversification. If you've got 5 different departments and no job costing and no systems, like, you just won't get that with the business. Where if you're focused and you're doing one type of work, whether it's landscape maintenance or design build or snow and ice, or maybe it is all 3, but you're doing them well, and you can get a 30% EBITDA out of the business, you're going to see an incredible multiple, and I think you're going to have a great exit. And that who doesn't matter who the buyer is, you're going to find one if you've got that type of business.
Yeah. I was laughing to myself because I was thinking of another hockey reference.
Yeah,
it's like you're approaching free agency and you're working on racking up a giant plus minus, but you got no points on the board. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And, often it's just like doing the things that you're good at and seeing the most profit possible. And so like that's what I talk about every time
Mhm.
I speak to a group is like get high revenue per hour and get really good bottom line profit out of it. Have a really well paid staff that can do it over and over and over again. And you've got a company that's repeatable. And whether
Mhm.
you're doing mostly install or maintenance and snow really doesn't matter in my eyes. It's like if you're really good at it and if you're consistently profitable, you might not even want to retire. Ultimately, you
That's it.
might want to
Yeah.
just own the business and
If it
have some
runs
employees
itself.
run it, right? And
Yeah.
have like an employee stock option program where there's 3 to 5 co-owners and you're on the golf course or wherever you want to be. Like there's so many ways to retire. I don't think that we should necessarily all hyper focus on the private equity interest in the industry as the be all and end all.
Mhm. Well said. Okay, Mark, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up here?
No, that
We've
was
covered a
great.
lot of great
Appreciate
ground.
the discussion. Love spending time chatting about the industry like this, as always, and appreciate you having me on today.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us, and I really like the perspective and the years of experience being shared with our audience here. You guys are going to be at all of the Hardscaper Showcase events this winter. So that's from January to March across the United States and Canada. Why was it important for LMN to participate and to be present with over 10,000 contractors this winter?
Yeah, I mean, we love the hardscape industry, as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
We that was very much the sector that I was always most passionate about, and so the type of contractors that turn up at the events in the past we found were just perfect for what we like to share in terms of knowledge and education, and obviously the tools that we offer at LMN really help companies unlock their true potential, and so. It's the perfect audience for us to spend time with, and we just love getting involved in anything that is elevating the industry. And I just haven't seen anything like the tour that you put together for the contractors in terms of the value that you're bringing to them, the peer-to-peer experiences, the educational experiences. I just feel like you are truly giving back to the industry, and we wanted to be a part of that.
Oh, good. Thank you. That's good feedback. And honestly, we're happy to have you guys around too, because you guys are doing the same thing. And I think, as long as we are all focused on doing those things, everyone who's in the industry is focused on trying to make the industry better. Like I was saying earlier, don't focus on the money, focus on doing the right things, and the money will come. It's the same thing for all of us. If we work on helping to elevate the industry, help the individuals in the industry reach their full potential, we'll all be better for it. And we'll all be happy that we did it.
Absolutely. It just feels good. That's
Absolutely.
great. All
Okay,
right.
so the website is golmn.com. If you want to sign up for our showcase events, you can check out events.hardscaper.com or go to techoblock.com and you can find it through there. And until next time, everybody, work hard, pave harder, and we'll see you next week on the Hardscape Growth Show. You've been listening to Hardscape Growth, a podcast for hungry professionals who want to grow their businesses and level up. Each episode is all about taking the next step in running your business, so make sure you never miss a show by subscribing on your favorite podcast player. And if you're finding this information to be useful, help others in your position discover us by giving us a star rating and leaving a comment. We'll see you next week.